3 empty chairs. That was the first thing I saw when I stepped into the reception hall. A glaring gap at the family table where my place should have been. Don't miss a single second of this gripping family betrayal. Hit play now and feel every twist unfold. I froze at the doorway, the late afternoon light slanting through the tall windows and spilling across polished floors. The smell of fresh lilies and lemon polish mixed with the faint tang of champagne. Guests milled about in bright dresses and pressed suits, laughing in little bursts that sounded too sharp like glass about to crack. My heart thudded once, hard enough to feel in my fingertips. For a moment I thought I'd miscounted. Maybe there were more chairs hidden by the centerpiece. I blinked and counted again. 1, 2, 3. That was all. 3 elegant ivory chairs draped in satin, each with a neat gold name card perched on the plate. My name was not among them. A flush of heat crept up my neck, but I kept my face smooth. I've lived 65 years and I know how to wear a mask. I let the corners of my mouth lift into a pleasant smile, the kind I've used to survive countless PTA meetings, office politics, and awkward family dinners. No one needed to see the sting. The band tested a slow jazz number near the stage. The clink of silverware against china filled the air like distant bells. My eyes scanned the room. There was my sister, the bride, standing near the cake table with her new husband, waving at distant cousins like a queen greeting her court. Her white dress caught the light in a way that made it look almost blue. She looked radiant and calculated. She saw me and paused. Only for a second, but long enough. Her smile tightened. She gave a small wave, a motion so delicate it could have been mistaken for a flutter of her veil. I raised my hand in return, a slow, measured gesture that told her I noticed everything. Inside, my mind ran through the hours I'd spent last night, climbing ladders to hang twinkling lights, checking the dessert table twice, staying up until 3 in the morning to fix the seating plan the coordinator had accidentally lost. I had ironed every napkin myself while others slept. I had been the one to find the missing floral delivery at midnight. My fingerprints were on every perfect detail of this wedding, and yet my chair was missing. A server brushed past me carrying a tray of sparkling cider. The scent of fresh apples followed him, sharp and sweet. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the silver tray. Calm eyes, lipstick still perfect, hairpin just so. Good. I would give them nothing. Mrs. Porter? The young coordinator approached, tablet in hand. Can I help you find your seat? I gave her my warmest grandmotherly smile. I believe there's been a small mistake. She tapped the screen, brows knitting. Family table, correct? Yes, I said evenly. The sister of the bride. Her finger hesitated on the tablet. I only have 3 names listed here. I'm so sorry. Of course you do, I murmured almost to myself. No need to apologize. Mistakes happen. She offered to find a spot near the back, but I waved her off with a gentle pat on the arm. I'll manage. My voice was soft, but inside I felt a quiet click, the sound of a door locking. They thought they'd hidden the key, but the key was in my pocket all along. I moved deeper into the room, letting the music guide me. People greeted me with polite smiles. You look wonderful, a cousin said. You must be so proud. I returned every compliment with a calm nod, storing each word like a pebble in my pocket. Pride, yes. That's what they expected. Pride and silence. Near the cake, my sister's best friend, Lena, with her 2 bright eyes, leaned in to whisper something to my sister. Both of them glanced my way before breaking into soft laughter. My sister's veil shifted and I caught a fragment of words. She actually stayed all night. The rest was lost under the swell of music, but the meaning was clear enough. They were laughing at the very work that made this room sparkle. I stepped closer to the table, pretending to admire the centerpiece. White roses, eucalyptus, tiny fairy lights hidden among the petals. I recognized the arrangement because I'd designed it myself. On the plates I read the 3 golden cards: Mother, Father, Maid of Honor. My name belonged between mother and father. Instead the space yawned empty, a silent dare. Lovely, isn't it? A deep voice broke my thoughts. It was Tom, an old family friend with a camera slung around his neck. All your hard work shows. My smile held steady. It does, doesn't it? He tilted his head, sensing something. But you don't look happy. I met his eyes. Happiness is flexible. I let the words hang. He chuckled awkwardly, not sure if it was a joke. As he wandered off, I pulled my phone from my clutch and tapped the screen. A familiar folder waited there, glowing like a quiet beacon. Inside were messages, screenshots, recordings, small things I'd collected over the past few weeks. Proof of late-night conversations, careless insults, secret arrangements. They thought their whispers were safe. They were wrong. I slid the phone back into my bag without opening it. Not yet. Timing was everything. The band switched to a lively swing tune and the crowd cheered. My sister finally approached, bouquet in hand, her groom a step behind. "You made it," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "I did," I replied, keeping my tone light. "Beautiful setup." "Thank you." Her eyes flicked toward the empty chairs and back to me, quick as a camera flash. "Oh, about the seating." I raised a hand. "Don't worry. I found a place to stand." Her groom shifted uncomfortably. "We hope you understand. It's complicated." I leaned in just enough for only her to hear. "I understand perfectly." Something flickered behind her eyes. Fear maybe, or recognition. For a heartbeat we stood locked in a silent conversation, our smiles hiding a lifetime of words. Then she broke the stare, laughing too loudly. "Enjoy the evening," she said, and swept away with her new husband. I watched her back as she disappeared into the crowd, veil trailing like a thin white lie. Around me the hall shimmered with music and light, but every sound felt distant, as if I were standing underwater. My pulse slowed, steady and deliberate. I could almost taste the night air outside, cool and sharp, waiting for me when this charade was over. A child darted past, chasing a fallen balloon. His giggle snapped me back to the present. I bent to pick up the balloon and handed it to him with a smile. "Hold on tight," I said. He nodded solemnly and ran off. Life continues even in the middle of betrayal. I straightened and looked again at the 3 empty chairs. They sat there like a silent judgment, daring me to react. But I've learned that the strongest move is often the quietest. I smoothed my dress, adjusted the clasp on my purse, and let my smile settle into something cool and unreadable. The evening stretched ahead, filled with toasts and dances and carefully chosen lies. They believed I was cornered, that a missing chair could erase my presence. They had no idea that every perfect detail of this wedding was already in my hands, and that a single touch of my finger could change everything. I took a slow breath, savoring the faint scent of roses and candle wax. The night was young and so was my plan. Then I saw her again across the room, laughing too hard at some private joke. Our eyes met. I held her gaze and let a small, deliberate smile spread across my face. A smile I didn't mean, but one that carried a promise she couldn't quite name. She looked away first. And in that single quiet victory, I felt the first spark of control burn warm and steady in my chest, waiting for the moment when I would need it most. She looked away first, and that tiny surrender warmed me like a hidden ember. I turned from the family table, smoothing the skirt of my dress as if adjusting fabric could steady the storm inside me. My smile stayed fixed, but my feet carried me toward the service corridor behind the hall, away from the chattering guests and their clinking glasses. The music softened the farther I walked, replaced by the low hum of refrigeration units and the faint hiss of dishwashers. The air back here smelled of detergent and cut lemons. I let the door swing closed behind me and exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. My hands, still steady, slid into my purse and found my phone. The folder glowed on the screen, the one I had labeled for later. My thumb hovered over it, a small thrill rising in my chest. Inside were the things they thought I was too old, too trusting to notice. Screenshots of late-night messages, whispered plans, tiny betrayals that built a mountain of proof. I had gathered each piece like a careful gardener collecting thorns. They believed their secrets floated safely in the cloud. I had already caught them in my net. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. "Mrs. Porter?" The young coordinator stepped into view, tablet tucked against her chest. Her cheeks were flushed from running. "Is everything all right? I noticed you left the hall." I angled my phone screen toward my palm and offered a calm smile. "Just catching my breath. Big day for our family." She relaxed but still looked uneasy. "Of course. Can I get you some water?" "Thank you, but I'm fine," I said, slipping the phone back into my purse. "Go take care of the others. They need you more than I do." Her relief was almost comical. She nodded and hurried away, her shoes squeaking against the polished floor. When the door clicked shut again, silence returned, thick and expectant. I leaned against the wall, feeling the cool paint through my dress. Years of teaching high school English had trained me to observe details others missed. The tremble in a voice, the careless word in a text. Those instincts served me well tonight. A burst of laughter drifted from the hall. Toasts had begun. I pictured my sister raising her glass, savoring her private victory while I stood unseen. Good. Let them think I was sulking. Let them believe the missing chair had cut me down. They had no idea I was already building the next act. I opened the folder and scrolled. There was the first screenshot. My sister complaining about the old maid's obsessive planning, sent to her maid of honor just 3 weeks ago. I'd stumbled on it when she left her laptop open during a late-night planning session. I should have closed the lid and walked away, said I learned. Another message showed her laughing about the budget I'd stretched to make her dream wedding possible. She'll pay for it, she always does, she'd written. I saved that one too. Each file carried a memory of the moment I captured it. A quick photo of an abandoned seating chart, a recorded snippet of her dismissive tone during a phone call, an email chain proving who really paid for the extra guests. Small things maybe, but together they formed a truth she could not deny. The door behind me swung open again. Thought I might find you here. Tom, the family friend with the camera, stepped inside carrying a half-empty glass of cider. His eyes softened when he saw my face. You disappeared. Everything okay? I straightened, keeping my tone light. Just needed a little quiet. He studied me for a long beat. Your sister's speech was pointed. Seemed like she wanted the whole room to know who did the heavy lifting. I smiled without warmth. She enjoys her little victories. He hesitated, lowering his voice. You don't deserve that. Kindness can be dangerous. Tempts you to confess. I met his gaze and chose my words carefully. People show who they are when they think no one's watching. Something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe even concern. If you need anything. I'm fine, Tom. Truly. I tilted my head toward the hall. Go capture the happy couple. History waits for no one. He left reluctantly, the door swinging shut once more. I waited until the echo faded before I let my shoulders sag. Tom's sympathy was sweet, but this wasn't a night for allies. This was a night for strategy. A clatter erupted somewhere deeper in the kitchen. I followed the sound and found a small break room tucked behind a stack of catering trays. A forgotten coffee pot hissed on the counter. I poured a cup, letting the bitter smell ground me. Steam curled against my face, warm and sharp. The caffeine steadied my heartbeat, focusing my thoughts. I needed more than proof. I needed timing. The slideshow. Of course. I had spent weeks organizing the photo montage meant to play during dessert. A cheerful timeline of childhood memories and romantic milestones. My sister had begged me to handle it because you're so good with details. I almost laughed at the irony now. The final files rested on the coordinator's laptop in the AV booth, exactly where I'd placed them this morning. And thanks to my late-night preparations, a single USB drive in my purse held a slightly different version. I set the coffee aside and checked the drive once more. Still safe. My late husband taught me years ago that technology is only as strong as the person who controls it. Tonight that person was me. The thought of him tightened my throat. Frank would have hated this tension, the silent games. He used to say, Grace, never let bitterness steal your sleep. But he also taught me to stand firm when someone tries to erase you. I whispered a quiet promise to his memory. This isn't bitterness. This is clarity. Footsteps echoed in the corridor again, lighter this time, hurried. I tucked the drive deeper into my purse and stepped back into the hall. The crowd had shifted. The toasts were ending. Guests clapped as the groom dipped my sister into a theatrical kiss. Cameras flashed like tiny lightning bolts. The room smelled of champagne and sugared frosting. I slipped along the edge of the crowd, unnoticed amid the cheers. Near the stage, the AV booth sat half hidden behind a curtain. The coordinator hovered over the laptop, adjusting volumes. Perfect. I approached with the friendly confidence of someone who belonged. Everything running smoothly? I asked. She startled slightly. Oh. Yes, just final checks. Mind if I peek? I leaned over the table, scanning the playlist of photo files. My carefully labeled folder sat exactly where I left it. A simple drag and drop was all it would take to replace the safe version with the one on my drive. I could almost feel the weight of the USB in my purse, ready to tip the night in my favor. The coordinator beamed. "You did such a beautiful job organizing these. Your sister's lucky to have you." I forced a gentle laugh. "That's what family is for." She returned to her work, unaware of the quiet war unfolding inches from her screen. A sudden burst of feedback squealed from the speakers, making us both flinch. Guests groaned playfully and the band offered a joking bow. The coordinator hurried to adjust the levels, giving me a precious moment alone with the laptop. My fingers itched to act, but I held back. Too soon. Timing mattered more than impulse. I needed every eye on the screen when the moment arrived. I stepped back, thanking her with a nod, and melted into the crowd. The scent of buttercream drifted from the cake table, mingling with the tang of sparkling wine. Across the room, my sister laughed with her new husband, a queen in white silk, certain of her victory. Her veil shimmered under the lights, fragile as a spider's web. I caught my reflection in a mirrored column, shoulders straight, chin high, eyes steady. The woman staring back at me wasn't the overlooked sister or the aging spinster they mocked. She was a strategist, a keeper of truths. And tonight, truth had sharp edges. As the guests raised another cheer, I felt the USB drive press lightly against the side of my purse, a silent companion waiting for my signal. My sister believed the missing chair had left me powerless. She would soon learn that I was standing not because I lacked a seat, but because I held the stage. The night was far from over. And neither was I. I slipped back into the crowd, the faint warmth of the USB drive pressing against my purse like a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. The band eased into a slower tune, a mellow guitar riff that settled over the room like a soft fog. Guests drifted toward the tables, balancing plates of roasted chicken and tiny rolls glistening with butter. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I moved closer to the family table, each step measured, deliberate. The 3 empty chairs gleamed beneath the soft lights, daring me to look. I kept my gaze forward. A waiter carrying a tray of sparkling cider paused beside me. "Would you like one, ma'am?" I accepted the glass, the chilled stem cooling my fingers. The bubbles tickled my nose with a crisp apple scent. I sipped slowly, letting the tart sweetness sharpen my focus. Around me, voices mingled with the hum of clinking cutlery and the faint squeak of shoes on waxed floors. The MC tapped the microphone, a hollow pop echoing through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "it's time for the wedding toasts." Chairs scraped against the floor as guests settled. My parents beamed at the center table, unaware, or unwilling to admit, the quiet war happening in their midst. My sister and her groom stood, arms wrapped in a picture-perfect pose, faces lit by the glow of 100 cell phones. They looked like the happy couple from a glossy magazine, but I knew better. I always had. The groom raised his glass first. "Tonight isn't just about love," he began, his voice smooth as the cider in my hand. "It's about family, the people who help make dreams come true." Applause rippled across the hall. My jaw tightened. Dreams come true. He had no idea how those words scraped against my patience like sandpaper. He went on, thanking parents, friends, distant relatives. My name never left his lips. Each omission landed like a silent drumbeat. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile, sipping again to hide the heat rising in my cheeks. Then my sister took the microphone. Her veil caught the light as she stepped forward, a queen ready to deliver her decree. "Family is everything," she said, her voice bright and confident. "We couldn't have done this without the people who love us most." Her eyes flicked briefly toward me. The look was quick, almost invisible to anyone else, but I caught it. A glimmer of triumph, a sparkle of challenge. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Some people," she continued, "worked harder than anyone will ever know. They gave their time, their late nights, their endless patience. And while tonight isn't about pointing out heroes," she paused for dramatic effect, "it's about celebrating love that lasts." The crowd clapped, charmed by her grace. I felt my pulse slow to a steady, deliberate beat. That single phrase, "while tonight isn't about pointing out heroes," was a dagger wrapped in satin. She had managed to acknowledge my work while erasing my name in the same breath. Polite cruelty hidden in plain sight. I raised my glass to my lips and let a small smile play across my face. Let her think she'd won. The night wasn't over and the slideshow still waited. Tom, the family friend with the camera, leaned close from behind. "Grace," he whispered, You deserve better than this. His words were a lifeline I didn't need. I kept my eyes on my sister. Better is coming, I murmured, soft enough for only me to hear. The MC invited others to speak. A cousin told a funny story about childhood pranks. My mother shared a sweet memory of my sister's first dance recital. Each toast blurred together, a wash of polite laughter and clinking glasses. But beneath the chatter I sensed a shift. Little cracks in the flawless evening began to show. At the far corner of the hall, a child's cry rose above the music. A glass slipped from a guest's hand, shattering against the tile with a sharp crack that made several people jump. A waiter rushed to clean it, the scent of spilled champagne drifting across the room. Small, insignificant moments, but together they felt like the first tremors before an earthquake. When the toasts ended, the groom reached for the microphone again. Before we move on to dessert, he said, let's raise one more glass to the person who made tonight's magic possible. For a heartbeat I thought he might finally speak my name. My stomach tightened, anticipation flickering like a match. Instead he smiled at his new bride. To my beautiful wife who made this day perfect. Cheers erupted, drowning the quiet gasp that almost escaped my throat. My sister beamed, basking in the applause, her eyes shining with victory. The match inside me burned out, replaced by a cool determination. So that was their game. I set my empty glass on a passing tray and moved toward the dessert table. The smell of buttercream and fresh strawberries filled the air. A tower of cupcakes stood like a sugary fortress, each one topped with a swirl of flawless frosting. I plucked a napkin and pretended to study the display while scanning the room. The AV booth sat near the stage, half hidden behind a curtain. The coordinator was gone, likely helping servers prepare for the cake cutting. Perfect. I drifted closer, blending with guests snapping photos of the cake. My pulse quickened, but my hands stayed steady. 65 years teach you how to hide a racing heart. A soft voice startled me. Grace? You okay? It was Tom again, camera strap across his chest. He looked concerned, eyes searching mine. Just admiring the cupcakes, I said lightly. He studied me, sensing more. You look focused. I tilted my head, allowing a small smile. Focus is the secret to good pictures, isn't it? He chuckled, though worry lingered in his eyes. You got that teacher look. Like you're about to grade someone. Maybe I am, I said and turned back to the cupcakes. He stayed a moment longer, then wandered off to capture another candid shot. I exhaled slowly. His kindness was both comforting and dangerous. The fewer people who suspected my plan, the better. The band began a lively swing tune, drawing guests to the dance floor. Laughter and clapping filled the air, masking the quiet creak of the curtain as I slipped behind it. The AV booth smelled faintly of warm electronics and fresh paper. The laptop screen glowed with the playlist I'd prepared. My folder still sat there, innocent and untouched. I rested my fingers on the table, feeling the faint vibration of the speakers through the wood. My USB drive rested in my purse like a loaded question. The timing wasn't right, not yet. I stepped back into the crowd before anyone could notice. As I emerged, a ripple of unease brushed the room. The groom whispered something to my sister, his jaw tightening. She followed his gaze across the hall, toward me. For the briefest second our eyes met. Her confident smile faltered, just enough to show the hairline crack in her perfect facade. That single flicker was worth every sleepless night. I returned her gaze with the same calm smile I'd worn since the ceremony began. No words, no gestures, just quiet acknowledgement of the game we were playing. The song ended. Applause filled the hall. Guests returned to their seats, unaware of the silent exchange that passed between two sisters across a crowded room. The first crack had appeared, and I intended to widen it. I stayed perfectly still, letting the applause fade while the band tuned their instruments for the next set. My sister kept her bright smile, but I caught the tiny twitch in her jaw as she looked away. A hairline fracture and a porcelain mask. That was all I needed. The MC's voice boomed across the room. Ladies and gentlemen, dessert will be served shortly, followed by a very special slideshow prepared by the bride's loving sister. A ripple of polite excitement moved through the crowd. Cameras lifted, chairs shifted. My chest tightened around a steady, deliberate heartbeat. I eased through the guests, careful to avoid Tom's searching eyes, and approached the AV booth once more. The curtain fluttered with each passing guest, releasing faint bursts of warm air mixed with the sugary scent of frosting. My hand slipped inside my purse, fingers brushing the cool metal of the USB drive. It felt heavier than it should, like a stone I'd been carrying for years. Inside the booth, the young coordinator was adjusting the laptop, her headset slightly askew. She glanced up with a quick smile. "Ready for your big moment, Mrs. Porter? The slideshow is next." "Almost," I replied, keeping my tone light. "May I check one last detail?" "Of course." She stepped aside. I leaned toward the laptop, pretending to review the playlist while my mind measured every second. Guests were still finding their seats. The band's final notes drifted into silence. The room hummed with anticipation. My thumb rubbed the edge of the USB, warm now from the heat of my hand. Not yet. Timing was everything. "Looks perfect," I said, withdrawing my hand before temptation won. "Thank you." She gave a cheerful nod and turned back to her controls. I slipped out from behind the curtain, heart hammering a slow, steady rhythm. One more cue. One more chance to breathe. The dessert tables opened, releasing a wave of sweet aromas: vanilla frosting, caramel drizzle, fresh berries. Servers moved like dancers, balancing trays of cupcakes and plates of wedding cake. I accepted a small slice from a passing tray, the fork trembling slightly in my grip. The buttercream tasted too sweet, almost metallic, but I forced it down. I needed the sugar for steadiness. Tom appeared at my side, camera resting against his chest. "Grace," he said softly, "you're pale. Sit with me for a bit." "I'm fine," I assured him, dabbing my mouth with a napkin. "Just a long day." His eyes narrowed with quiet suspicion. "Something's happening, isn't it?" I met his gaze, letting a small smile soften the tension. "Something's always happening at weddings." He chuckled, but worry lingered in his eyes. Before he could press further, the MC returned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll turn your attention to the screen, we have a beautiful journey to share." The lights dimmed. A hush rolled across the hall like a slow tide. Conversation ceased, forks froze midair. Only the faint hum of the projector filled the silence. My heart matched the rhythm, each beat a quiet drum beneath my ribs. The first images glowed onto the wide screen. Childhood photos of my sister and me in matching Easter dresses, our faces sticky with chocolate. The crowd let out a collective sigh. Soft piano music floated from the speakers, delicate and warm. Nostalgia wrapped the room like a soft blanket. I watched the pictures unfold: birthday parties, school plays, awkward teenage smiles. Guests laughed gently at our bad haircuts and crooked teeth. My sister's eyes shone as she leaned against her new husband, pretending this was simply a celebration of love. She had no idea how carefully I'd layered the files. The coordinator's voice whispered through her headset near the booth. "Slide change in 3, 2. The next photo appeared. My sister and her groom during their first vacation together, sunburned but smiling. Another sigh from the crowd. I felt the USB drive press harder against my purse, as if urging me forward. A hand brushed my arm. "Tom again." "Grace," he murmured, "are you sure you want to watch this from here? There's a seat by the aisle." I kept my eyes on the screen. "I can see everything from here." He hesitated, then stepped back, sensing the invisible wall around me. The slideshow flowed on. College graduations, family barbecues, the proposal captured beneath twinkle lights. Each image was perfectly timed, each transition smooth. I knew because I had designed it that way. But hidden within this careful sequence lay the subtle shifts only I could detect. On one slide, a text overlay lingered a fraction too long. A group chat screenshot cropped to show just enough of a mocking phrase about the helper sister who will do anything. Most guests laughed at the candid expressions, unaware of the words half hidden near the edge. I watched my sister stiffen slightly. He saw it. Good. Another slide revealed a receipt from a florist. Innocent at first glance, but with a date and signature proving I'd paid for the elaborate arrangements now decorating the hall. The crowd noticed the flowers in the photo and murmured appreciation. Only my sister recognized the implication. Her smile faltered for a heartbeat before she recovered. Each carefully planted detail worked like a quiet hammer, tapping cracks into the polished surface of their perfect night. Nothing loud, nothing that could be dismissed as sabotage. Just small truths, undeniable and impossible to explain away. The music swelled toward the finale. I knew the final series of images, romantic engagement shots bathed in golden light, would play next. The version on the laptop ended with a gentle fade to black. The version on my USB held a different ending, one they would never forget. The coordinator announced softly over the headset, "Last sequence coming up." Her voice reached me through the tiny speaker on the laptop, a whisper only I seemed to hear. I moved toward the booth again, each step slow and deliberate. My sister watched me now, her smile brittle. She knew something was wrong, though not what. Her groom followed her gaze, confusion tightening his brow. Inside the booth, the coordinator adjusted a volume knob. "Almost done," she said brightly. "You should be proud, people love it." I gave her a warm, steady look. "Thank you for saying that." Behind me, the crowd remained mesmerized by the glowing screen. The hall smelled of melted candle wax and fresh roses, the air warm from so many bodies holding their breath. The coordinator turned to check a cable, leaving the laptop unattended for a single precious second. My fingers found the USB drive. A flash of movement at the edge of my vision made me pause. My sister was on her feet, veil trembling as she pushed through the guests, her eyes locked on mine. Panic flickered across her face, brief but sharp. He knew. Somehow she knew. I slid the drive back into my purse before she could reach me. Not yet. The anticipation itself was power, and I wasn't ready to surrender it. "Grace," she hissed when she reached the curtain, her voice low but urgent. "What are you doing back here?" I met her gaze, calm and unwavering. "Checking on my work. Surely you want it to run smoothly." Her breath came fast, eyes darting to the laptop. Don't touch anything." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Why would I?" The coordinator turned, surprised to see us both. "Is everything okay?" My sister forced a tight smile. "Just a quick check. Everything's fine." She lingered a moment longer, her hand trembling slightly on the curtain edge, then retreated to her seat. I watched her go, the soft rustle of her dress loud in the charged silence. Guests turned curious eyes toward her, whispering behind raised hands. The final romantic images filled the screen, music swelling to a tender crescendo. My sister clasped her groom's arm, but her smile never returned. She knew the balance of power had shifted, even if the audience remained blissfully unaware. The light stayed low as the slideshow reached its gentle fade-out. Applause rose like distant thunder, polite and warm. I stepped back from the booth, the USB still safe in my purse, my heartbeat steady and deliberate. They thought the show was over. But I knew the night had only begun to breathe. Applause rolled across the darkened hall, polite and warm. Guests turned back to their plates, trading compliments on the sweet tribute. Only a few noticed my sister's stiff shoulders or the way her groom whispered questions she refused to answer. I remained by the curtain, my pulse steady, the USB drive resting like a quiet secret inside my purse. The coordinator leaned toward me. "It went perfectly," she said, her headset still glowing. "Perfect," I echoed, the word tasting different on my tongue, sharper, cleaner. Behind me, the band struck a bright chord. Lights brightened. The evening's rhythm resumed as if nothing had shifted, but I felt the change vibrating in the floorboards. My sister knew it too. Her glance darted toward the AV booth again and again, each time landing on me with a flicker of unease. I stepped forward, joining the flow of guests as servers cleared dessert plates. Tom intercepted me near the dance floor, camera strap cutting a neat line across his chest. "Grace," he said quietly, "something happened during that slideshow." "What did you do?" I offered a calm smile. "Nothing the truth didn't invite." His eyes searched mine. "You look lighter." "Maybe I am." Before he could press further, the MC announced the next tradition, the bouquet toss. Laughter bubbled as single women gathered near the dance floor. I stayed where I was, watching my sister turn her back to the crowd, veil trembling under the stage lights. She tossed the bouquet high. It arced through the air, petals scattering like tiny white birds. A young cousin caught it and squealed. Cameras flashed. My sister clapped, but her smile never reached her eyes. The game was ending and she knew it. I moved toward the family table, weaving through dancers and half-empty glasses. My parents looked up in surprise when I approached. "Grace," my mother said. "Why don't you sit? We saved you a chair near." "There's no chair for me," I said gently. "Remember." Confusion flickered across her face, But before she could respond, my sister appeared at my side. "Grace," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." I followed her out of earshot, past the dessert table to a quiet corner near the exit. The hall's noise softened to a distant murmur. She faced me, hands clenched around her bouquet. "What did you put in that slideshow?" "Pictures," I said simply. "Memories." Her jaw tightened. "Don't play games. Those screenshots. You were trying to humiliate me." I met her gaze without flinching. "I shared moments we both lived. If some of them were cruel, that's because cruelty was present." "That wasn't your place," she snapped. "You were supposed to help me, not." "Not what?" My voice stayed calm, but each word cut clean. "Not remind you that love without respect is hollow? Not show the family the truth you hide behind pretty speeches." Her breath quickened. "You ruined my night." I tilted my head. "Did I? Or did you ruin it yourself when you decided I was useful but not worthy of a seat?" For a heartbeat, silence stretched between us, thick and electric. Her eyes glistened, but not with remorse, only anger. "You always think you're smarter," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "I just refuse to be erased." She opened her mouth, then closed it, bouquet trembling in her grip. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You built this wedding on appearances. I built my life on proof. Tonight the difference showed." Her lips parted, but no words came. The hall behind us erupted in laughter as the band struck another lively tune. I let the sound fill the space between us. "I don't need revenge," I continued. "I only needed the truth to breathe." I held her gaze until she finally looked away. I turned before she could recover, leaving her frozen among the echoes of her perfect night. The corridor leading to the exit smelled of cool night air and fading roses. My heels clicked softly against the polished tile. Tom appeared near the doorway, camera hanging at his side. "Heading out?" he asked. "Yes." "Alone?" I smiled. "Always." He hesitated. "Do you want company?" "Thank you, but no. This walk is mine." Outside, the crisp night wrapped around me like a welcome coat. The parking lot glowed under string lights, each bulb humming faintly in the cool air. I inhaled deeply, letting the scent of damp earth and distant pine settle my heartbeat. For the first time all evening, I allowed myself to feel the weight lifting. It wasn't triumph in the childish sense. It was steadiness, a quiet knowing that I had reclaimed something they tried to take. My sister's public smile might survive tonight, but the truth would echo in every photo, every whispered replay of the slideshow. She would remember the eyes that caught those tiny details, the murmurs she could never silence. I walked toward my car, purse swinging lightly at my side. The USB drive remained inside, untouched. I hadn't needed the alternate ending after all. The carefully planted clues were enough. No screaming, no chaos, just truth, undeniable and permanent. As I reached the driver's door, a memory of Frank surfaced. His steady voice telling me years ago, "Grace, dignity is the only power no one can take unless you hand it over." I smiled into the cool night, understanding him in a way I never had before. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from Tom. "You okay?" I typed back, "Better than okay." Then I slipped the phone away and looked up at the sky. Stars glittered above the string lights, sharp and endless. Somewhere inside the hall, music played on, a celebration continuing without me. Let it. I had no need to witness the aftermath. My work was done. I started the engine, the soft purr breaking the quiet. In the rearview mirror, the reception hall glowed like a snow globe, pretty, contained, and very far away. I didn't need to shatter it. Cracks, once formed, spread on their own. As I pulled onto the dark country road, the night air streamed through the open window, cool against my face. Freedom smelled of pine and possibility. For the first time in years, I felt not younger but clearer, like a woman who had stepped out of a shadow she never agreed to stand in. Tonight wasn't about destroying anyone. It was about refusing to be invisible. And that, I realized as the lights of the hall faded behind me, is the only power that ever truly matters. If this dark, emotional journey struck a chord with you, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories that speak to a woman's strength and silent victories.